was born and raised in Los Angeles, California. Both of my parents were young. They were both drug dealers, actively gang members, and heroin addicts. My mom was only 13 when she started using heroin, and my dad followed her at the age of 14. They were both selling for my grandma, along with my dad's two older brothers. So they had no way of providing for a child or even know how to raise a child. I ended up going to live with my grandmother, and I was going back and forth from one grandma to the next grandma. My mom didn't even realize she was pregnant until she was 3 months. That's because the heroin that she was using, which is a very bad drug, was sucking all the life out of her and also sucking the life out of me. I grew up from grandma to grandma, and it wasn't a good thing. I would be on the streets all the time, doing what I wanted to do, running away. My grandmother would take me to church. I would go to church so I knew about God. I know that played an important part in my life. I chose to run around and go to parties at the age of 12, and at the age of 13, I joined a gang, and I ended up in juvenile hall for carjacking. They sentenced me to a year, but I was so bad and got in so many fights, I ended up doing basically 3 years. So from the age of 13, 14, 15, I was freed again to go and do madness again, which I call. I started doing what I wanted, being with women, doing drugs, running around, stealing, doing whatever I thought was necessary at the time to fit in to a group of people that I didn't belong to. I continued that destructive path, and at the age of 18, I ended up being incarcerated for a bigger crime, and they sentenced me to 7 years with 85%, which means 6 years and a half. In there, it's serious business. It's not no little kid juvenile hall stuff no more now. It's adult stuff, and I ended up getting into problems, and I almost lost my life in there due to gang-related activities. I got released in 2010. I went in 2004, and I was released in 2010. Came out and still continued my madness. My wife was there with my kids the whole time, faithfully by my side, and still I didn't see the blessings that God had given me. Though I always acknowledged him, I never wanted to do what he asked of me to do. I just continued to do my things, got into many problems, a lot of hurt in my family, a lot of hurt. I've hurt my wife so much. I have my children. I was never there for them. I came to a conclusion one time that I hugged more jail bars than I ever hugged my family. That's how sad my life was becoming. So I ended up moving out here to Arkansas. I continued with the madness, partying, doing drugs, lying, cheating, stealing, doing what I wanted. Until this one day, everything came to a close. I started feeling like I was going to die soon. I was being manipulated by a force that was tormenting me so bad that I was so powerless. And me thinking that this was an enemy of flesh and blood, but it wasn't. It was a dark force that I could not whatsoever detach myself from. Things started worsening, and eventually my wife left me. I continued, and I drank to my misery. Cigarettes and drugs were coming from everywhere. And I wasn't even asking for them. It's like the enemy was throwing things that he knew could manipulate me to not focusing on what God was trying to tell me the whole time. So eventually I felt that the only way that I could make my family happy was to commit suicide. No matter how much I contemplated it, I couldn't do it to myself. So I figured that I would make someone so angry enough to kill me. God, knowing my heart, would forgive me and have mercy on me because I didn't take my own life, but someone else did. That's how twisted my mind was. That's how bad the devil had manipulated me. So as I was there in my living room, contemplating a way to commit suicide, I just figured I couldn't do it. So I started screaming and yelling, hoping that someone would hear me, knowing that someone was listening and that they were going to come in and kill me. As I was doing that, I looked up and I seen a Bible. I seen a Bible that had been in my house for a long time, but I was so blinded that Bible was just invisible to me. I picked that Bible up, and I don't know what made me pick it up. at that time, but I did, and I looked in it, and scripture just started coming to me, and it was speaking to me like I've never ever been spoken. Like it came alive. The Bible was I was producing thoughts in my mind, and the Bible was responding, and I just broke down because I knew right there and then someone came to save me, and it was Jesus. He was there in my living room breathing life into me, telling me that I'm better than what I'm contemplating, that all I need to do is accept him, and that he will take over. And that's exactly what I did. I broke down and I started crying so loud. I was overcome by sorrows and everything, and I just gave it to him. I said, I proclaimed my faith in him, and I asked him to forgive my sins, and he forgave my sins at that moment. And I know at that moment when I accepted him, my name was written in the book of life. And ever since then, I've never been the same.